Grass-fed beef is hands down one of the biggest scams on the planet. It's an outright lie. What I'm about to share with you will probably make you angry. Less than 1% of the beef sold in the US is actually truly grass-fed. This whole grass-fed idea is loaded with loopholes from top to bottom. Back in 2016, the USDA scrapped the official definition of what grass-fed even means. Technically, all cows start off being grass-fed. It's during the last 3 to 6 months that their diet changes. That's when they're fed grains and other things that most people aren't even aware of. More than 99% of the beef people are purchasing isn't fully grass-fed, even though the label says otherwise. A huge amount of beef sold in America is imported from other countries, and with just minimal processing like packaging, it legally becomes labeled as product of the USA. That's because the country of origin labeling rule for beef and pork was repealed, meaning it was removed. This is yet another example of how transparency is lacking. People assume that if it's labeled as American, it must be healthier. But in many cases, it's not even coming from the US. And here's a side note you may not know. When you order a burger from a fast food chain, that patty you're eating could be made from beef that comes from over 100 different cows. These massive processing plants blend meat from all over the place. What people really need to understand is that the meat they're eating comes from cows that are very sedentary and overweight. The reason that beef is so tender is because these animals barely have any collagen in their muscle. No collagen equals extreme tenderness. People love marbled meat that melts in your mouth, but what they don't want to think about is how that meat got that way. What I'm going to tell you next might actually make you fall out of your chair, and it's about what these animals are really eating. You might assume, oh, grains. Probably some hearty whole grains, right? Not even close. These animals in the feedlot are given something called DDGS, dried distillers grains with solubles. It's the waste left over from ethanol production. They take dent corn, a type of field corn that humans can't eat, and after extracting ethanol from it, they're left with this GMO byproduct soaked in glyphosate. It's a toxic leftover, and instead of throwing it away, they feed it to livestock. Because of government subsidies, meaning taxpayer money, it only costs about $150 per metric ton to buy this waste material. Can you see now why the beef industry is so profitable? They need the cow to gain an extra 600 pounds before slaughter, and the only way to do that is with ultra-cheap feed like this. $150 per ton? It's insane. That's the base of their diet. Then they add a bit of fiber, some limestone, synthetic vitamins and minerals, and on top of all that, that's an antibiotic. Antibiotics are regularly used in American something called monensin feedlots, and not just to fight infections. They're actually used to increase weight gain. Even beef labeled grass-fed may have been given antibiotics, unless the label clearly says no antibiotics. But that's not all. They also use something else in the US, a drug called beta agonists. These medications stimulate muscle growth, adding up to 30 pounds of extra meat. They mimic adrenaline, and there are studies suggesting they may even increase anxiety in people who consume them through food. There are 2 types of feedlots: indoor, closed, and outdoor, open. Let's talk about the closed ones first. Imagine a 1,500-pound cow confined to just 24 square feet of space. That might not sound like much, and it isn't. For reference, a standard parking space is 128 square feet. So compare that, 24 square feet for a cow versus 128 for your car. That means you can squeeze 6 cows into the space of a single parking spot. That's where they live, for 3 to 6 months. Why? Because they need to stay sedentary, be overfed with cheap food, and bulk up rapidly so their meat becomes marbled and ultra-tender, which is just another way of saying the animal is extremely unhealthy. That's the meat you're eating. Now, the open feedlots don't offer much more space. Those cows get around 150 square feet, slightly more than a parking space, but still very cramped. So how do you actually find real grass-fed beef? Look for the label that says 100% grass-fed. If it only says grass-fed, it's essentially meaningless. I strongly recommend you spend a little extra and go for higher quality meat. It helps you, and it supports small farmers who are being pushed out of the system.